Alright. Children's Annuad. Could have two of them. The first ones were brothers, Anu and Padme. They came into the void, and time began. As Anu and Padme wandered the void, the interplay of light and darkness created Nier. Both Anu and Padme were amazed and delighted with her appearance, but she loved Anu, and Padme retreated from them in bitterness. Nier became pregnant, but before she gave birth, Padme returned, professing his love for Nier. She told him that she loved only Anu, and Padme beat her in rage. Anu returned, fought Padme, and cast him outside time. Nier gave birth to creation, but died from her injuries soon after. Anu, grieving, hid himself in the sun and slept. Meanwhile, life sprang up on the 12 worlds of creation and flourished. After many ages, Padme was able to return to time. He saw creation and hated it. He swung his sword, shattering the 12 worlds in their alignment. Anu awoke and fought Padme again. The long and furious battle ended with Anu the victor. He cast aside the body of his brother, who he believed was dead, and attempted to save creation by forming the remnants of the 12 worlds into one, Nirn, the world of Tamriel. As he was doing so, Padme struck him through the chest with one last blow. Anu grappled with his brother and pulled them both outside of time forever. The blood of Padme became the Daedra. The blood of Anu became the stars. The mingled blood both became the Aedra. Of both became the Aedra. Hence their capacity for good and evil, and their greater affinity for earthly affairs than the Daedra, who have no connection to creation. On the world of Nirn, all was chaos. The only survivors of the 12 worlds of creation were the Elnafei and the Hist. The Elnafei are the ancestors of Mer and Men. The Hist are the trees of Argonia. Nirn originally was all land, with interspersed seas, but no oceans. A large fragment of the Elnafei world landed on Nirn relatively intact, and the Elnafei living there were the ancestors of the Mer. These Elnafei fortified their borders from the chaos outside, hid their pockets from the calm, and attempted to live on as before. Other Elnafei arrived on Nirn, scattered amid the confused jumble of the shattered worlds, wandering and finding each other over the years. Eventually, the wandering Elnafei found the hidden land of the old Elnafei and were amazed and joyful to find their kin living amid the splendor of ages past. The wandering Elnafei expected to be welcomed into the peaceful realm, but the old Elnafei looked on them as degenerates falling from their former glory. For whatever reason, war broke out and raged across the whole of Nirn. The old Elnafei retained their ancient power and knowledge, but the wanderers were more numerous and toughened by their long struggle to survive in Nirn. This war reshaped the face of Nirn, sinking much of the land beneath new oceans and leaving the lands as we know them, Tamriel, Akavir, Atmora, and Yokuda. The old Ernafei realm, although ruined, became Tamriel. The remnants of the wanderers were left divided on the other 3 continents. Over many years, the Elnafei of Tamriel became the Mer elves. the Dwemer, the Deep Ones, sometimes called dwarves, the Kimmer, the Changed Ones, who later became the Dunmer, the Dark or Cursed Ones, or the Dark Elves, the Bosmer, the Green or Forest Ones, the Wood Elves, and the Altmer, the Elder or High Ones, the High Elves. On the other continents, the wandering Elnafey became the Men, the Nords of Atmora, the Red Guards of Yokuda, and the Tsaesi of Akavir. The Hist were bystanders in the Elnafey War, but most of their realm was destroyed as the war passed over it. A small corner of it survived and became the Black Marsh in Tamriel, but most of their realm was sunk beneath the sea. Eventually, men returned to Tamriel. The Nords were the first, colonizing the northern coast of Tamriel before recorded history, led by the legendary Iskramor. The 13th of his line, King Harald, was the first to appear in written history, and so the mythic era ended. Alright, well, I'll put that book on the shelf. Dalmor Dossier, Delphine. I should read the rest of those Dalmor dossiers. Okay, so one on there. I gotta get rid of these books. I've got too many junk books in my inventory. I'm gonna throw them into the river because I don't think anyone's awake right now. What time is it? It's 5:04 p.m. So maybe someone is awake that will buy these.
I don't claim to be the best. Looking to protect yourself or deal some damage?
Okay, she won't buy quest items.
Don't forget to
so
check inside the
whatever.
shop if you need anything.
Anyway, I got rid of all the shit that I don't need. I'm gonna go read another book. Oh man, I don't know about these. Volume 1, Volume 5, I'm not going to start on any. Ancestors in the Dunmer. That's what I'll read. Ghosts walk among them. The departed spirits of the Dunmeri, and perhaps those of all races, persist after death. The knowledge and power of departed ancestors benefits the bloodlines of Dunmeri houses. The bond between the living family members and the immortal ancestors is partly blood, partly ritual, partly volitional. A member brought into the house through marriage binds himself through ritual and oath into the clan and gains communication and benefits from the clan's ancestors. However, his access to the ancestors is less than his offspring, and he retains some access to the ancestors of his own bloodline. The family shrine. Each residence has a family shrine. In poorer homes, it may be no more than a hearth or alcove where family relics are displayed and venerated. In wealthy homes, a room is set aside for the use of the ancestors. This shrine is called the Waiting Door and represents the door to oblivion. Here the family members pay their respects to their ancestors through sacrifice and prayer, though oaths sworn upon duties and through reports on the affairs of the family. In return, the family may receive information, training, and blessings from the family's ancestors. The ancestors are thus the protectors of the home and essentially precincts of the Waiting Door. the ghost fence. It is the family's most solemn duty to make sure their ancestors' remains are interred properly in a city of the dead such as Necrom. Here the spirits draw comfort from one another against the chill of the mortal world. However, as a sign of great honor and sacrifice, an ancestor may grant that part of his remains to be retained to serve as a part of the ghost fence, protecting the clan's shrine and family precincts. Such an arrangement is often part of a family member's will, that a knuckle bone shall be saved out of his remains and incorporated with solemn magic and ceremony into a clan ghost fence. In more exceptional cases, an entire skeleton or even a preserved corpse may be bound into a ghost fence. These remains become a beacon and focus for ancestral spirits, and for the spirit of the remains in particular. The more remains used to make a ghost fence, the more powerful the fence is, and the most powerful mortals in life have the most powerful remains. The great ghost fence created by the tribunal to hold back the blight incorporates the bones of many heroes of the temple and of the houses Indoril and Redoran, who dedicated their spirits to the temple and clan as their surrogate families. The ghost fence also contains bones taken from the catacombs and Necrom and the many battlefields of Morrowind, the mortal chill. Spirits do not like to visit the mortal world, and they do so only out of duty and obligation. Spirits tell us that the other world is more pleasant, or at least more comfortable for spirits than our real world, which is cold, bitter, and full of pain and loss. Mad spirits. Spirits that are forced to remain in our world against their will may become mad spirits or ghosts. Some spirits are bound to this world because of some terrible circumstances of their death, or because of some powerful emotional bond to a person, place, or thing. These are called hauntings. Some spirits are captured and bound to enchanted items by wizards. If the binding is involuntary, the spirit usually goes mad. A willing spirit may or may not retain its sanity, depending on the strength of the spirit and the wisdom of the enchanter. Some spirits are bound against their wills to protect family shrines. This unpleasant fate is reserved for those who have not served the family faithfully in life. Dutiful and honorable ancestral spirits often aid in the capture and binding of wayward spirits. These spirits usually go mad and make terrifying guardians. They are ritually prevented from harming mortals of their clans, but that does not necessarily discourage them from mischievous or peevish behavior. They are exceedingly dangerous for intruders. At the same time, if an intruder can penetrate the spirit's madness and play upon the spirit's resentment of his own clan, the angry spirits may be manipulated. Oblivion. The existence of oblivion is acknowledged by all Tamriel cultures, but there is little agreement on the nature of that other world, other than it is the place of Adria, where the Adria and Daedra live, and that communication and travel are possible between this world and oblivion through magic and ritual. The Dumber do not emphasize the distinction between this world and oblivion, as do the human cultures of Tamriel. They regard our world as the other world, as a whole with many paths from one end to the other, rather than two separate worlds of different natures with distinct borders. This philosophical viewpoint may account for the greater affinity of elves for magic and its practices. foreign views of Dunmerry ancestor worship and spirit magic. The Altmerry and Bosmerry cultures also venerate their ancestors, but only by respecting the orderly and blissful passage of these spirits from this world to the next. That is, Wood Elves and High Elves believe it is cruel and unnatural to encourage the spirits of the dead to linger in our world. Even more grotesque and repugnant is the display of the bodily remains of ancestors in ghost fences and ash pits. The presentation of finger bones in a family shrine, for example, is sacrilegious to the Bosmer, who eat their dead, and barbaric to the Altmer, who inter their dead. The human cultures of Tamriel are ignorant and fearful of dark elves and their culture, considering them to be inhuman and evil, like orcs and Argonians, but more sophisticated. The human populations of Tamriel associate Dunmerry ancestor worship and spirit magic with necromancy. In fact, this association with the Dark Elves with necromancy is at least partly responsible for the dark reputation of Dunmer throughout Tamriel. This is generally an ignorant misconception, for necromancy outside the acceptable clan rituals is a most abhorrent abomination in the eyes of the Dunmer. The Dark Elves would never think of practicing sorcerous necromancy upon any Dark Elf or upon the remains of any elf. However, the Dark Elves consider the human and orcish races to be little more than animals. There is no injunction against necromancy upon such remains or on the remains of any animal, bird, or insect. Imperial policy officially recognizes the practices of Dunmerry ancestor veneration and spirit magic as a religion, and protects their freedom to pursue such practices so long as they do not threaten the security of the Empire. Privately, most Imperial officials and traders believe Dark Elf ancestor worship and displays of remains are barbaric or even necromantic. Telvanni necromancy. The Telvanni are adept masters of necromancy. They do not, however, practice necromancy upon the remains of Dark Elves. Sane Telvanni regard such practices with loathing and righteous anger. They do not practice necromancy upon the remains of animals and upon the remains of